controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a science here to make things make sense.
Okay. In your studies, what did they say was the ages of midlife? Mine were all over the place.
Oh, to be honest, I didn't specifically look at humans.
Oh, epic. That's
And
so cool.
so, I mean, midlife, what was it for you? Midlife?
Okay, so one study was 40 to 70. And I was like,
Oh, that definitely
seems
is not
late.
midlife.
Like-
I mean, maybe 40, but
yeah.
not 70.
Yeah, okay. And then the other was mid 30s to 50, which felt more in line with what I thought. And then another one was mid 30s to 65. And they were all...
Okay, I mean, obviously there's a range.
Yeah. I know, but
I'm
I
just
kind of
thinking,
was like, what do
is
you
literally-
picture as a midlife?
Well, midlife would be 40.
Okay,
because,
'cause-
I mean,
yeah,
if the average
true.
person lives to 78 or something.
Yeah. I always pictured a 55-year-old man buying a Porsche, doing weird shit. I pictured 50 for some reason. And then when I
Yeah.
started to read these variables and when I saw the one was mid 30s, I thought to myself, am I going to be in one soon?
I mean, I think that it's not... midlife obviously is a range. I don't picture it as a 40-year-old person, although I could see it happening then. But you're right. The quintessential idea is also weirdly gendered as a man.
Yeah.
Who, goes through
Wow.
around after 50, maybe once he's hit the peak of his career and is now slowing down and being what is the point of life?
There is some science in one of these studies about why it actually is way more common in men.
Okay, well, why don't you kick it off? But before we start, are you having a midlife crisis?
No, I don't know. No, I don't think that I am. But everyone at all times is having a bit of a crisis, right?
Well, I am. I'm
wait, you are?
No, I mean I'm always
What?
having a crisis. I'm
but
I'm is everyone not having an existential crisis almost every day?
yeah, no.
Is that not what's
Okay,
happening?
well, a midlife crisis. So interesting. These studies were all over the place because it's kind of
but since I've been
what is that?
25, maybe closer
But I'm thinking
to 30.
what you're going through is not based on the science that I'm reading. A midlife crisis.
Oh, I know. But then I just mean talking about
Yeah.
crises, and I'm
Yeah.
just even outside of this episode. I
Okay,
just
well,
need
do you
to
wanna
know
tell everyone what's your thing?
No, I'm just does everyone sort of have the moment when they're like, "What are we doing?"
I think
What's
so.
the point of it all?
Yes, and I do feel like it could be starting now because they're it is an aging thing. So, okay, I'm just gonna start. We can talk about your crisis in it because I think it's interesting. But I do think
No,
there's
it's not my crisis.
Sorry, wait, but what are you talking about? I thought you were kind of you're in a crisis.
No, I just mean I feel like I'm constantly having some level of existential crisis.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do based on these studies is maybe explain why yours isn't a midlife crisis, but
Yeah.
it's just maybe a crisis.
just a crisis.
So
Okay.
these studies talk a lot about midlife crises happening once you've already started a family.
Okay.
The family started, in many ways, the family's maybe even done. You've worked your way up to a pretty substantial, repetitive job. Your relationships with people have now changed, which I think is something I kind of can relate to by being in my 30s, but it's the kid thing hasn't really happened yet. And you're dealing with aging parents. So that was
all those factors.
those factors were the only thing I could really find as connections between these massive studies that I read. I will say midlife crises are hard to study.
Yeah,
It's
that makes
hard
sense.
to really define. And I think a lot of people go through a lot of weird shit at all aspects of life.
Yeah.
So one thing I thought was so interesting was that, so during midlife, which this one was the 40 to 71, that what they were saying is that you have likely already started to have kids. You've likely already found the career path that you want. They sort of left the 20s and 30s to experimenting, figuring it out, having the ability to figure it out.
Oh my God, are we
play
still
with
in the
it.
experimental phase?
Yeah, well, according to these, none of them had early 30s.
My existential crisis is gone.
Yeah, no, none of these were and then yeah.
I'm still looking.
So the main thing that was really interesting was social encounters. In your 20s, your brain and the gray matter is built in a way where you are willing to meet new people. You're willing to go out on a Friday night, party with strangers, and kind of build relationships all over the map, which is healthy and does make
Which is hell.
which is hell. No, I am relating to that a little bit right now. It just feels like hell a little bit. But it's healthy and it does a lot of things to the gray matter in your brain. Like gray matter, like the way your brain the way your brain fires, it also wires. Like you have plasticity. So like in your 20s, you're kind of like, your brain is a very unique thing, and you maybe aren't going through what they're thinking is a midlife crisis, and they're measuring it by like gray matter. So essentially, when you become midlife, you figure out these are the actual people I like. Yeah. Like these are the friends, and usually it's their family.
You're not looking for new ones maybe anymore.
You're fostering and spending a lot more time with less people, which in one ways is good. But in another way, it's like your brain actually physically changes in midlife because your social interactions are a lot smaller.
Yeah, let's talk about that quickly. Okay. What do you feel about that? And like, do you personally think
I feel like I relate to that.
I relate to it, but sometimes I'm like, I am sad about it. And like, I'll be the first to admit at a party, like, I do not want to meet new people. Like, I'm like terrified and I don't want to meet anyone new. But there's certain like things and because part of my existential crisis is like we're in this pandemic and I really am craving like finding some new community this is not a statement on any of our friends or anything. Like I love our friends and I do feel like I'm having deeper and better relationships with our friends, but like I miss like joining a musical theater group and meeting a bunch of new people and having fun, and because that's like a safe space for me.
Well, that's interesting because they're kind of saying that midlife crisis might be a reaction to that. It might be like, oh my god, I've been around the same people for so long. I gotta
expand my horizons.
Like now all of a sudden your dad has joined a hockey team, and like that might be a small version, or like you see a change in like I'm doing the stereotypical man thing, or you see a change where like all of a sudden your mom is like, you know what, I need to get out there and start joining a hockey team. Like there's just like things that you might see your parents do because they're like, holy shit, I just like my life became so small.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, it probably lines up with when your kids are finally done being raised.
Yeah. And so one thing they said though was that midlife crises were a lot worse for people who didn't build families.
Were worse.
Yeah. So what they were realizing is like, I think they were like, this is a separate study now. This is the one that was saying a different time, 35 to 50. Okay. They were saying that loneliness is like, they were defining a midlife crisis as like a deep feeling of loneliness. And they were saying the reason it's worse for men than women is that women are really good at keeping up their relationships with friends throughout their like time raising a family. Whereas men isolate themselves more and have a harder time keeping up relationships. And they think that's why men maybe have to go through more of a midlife crisis more.
Because they're kind of like alone in it.
Yeah. And they were going through the gray matter of like men, like stereotypical fathers and mothers in the same families, and finding that when men didn't have families, they were having like way less social interactions. And they were saying the main way to stave off a midlife crisis was to be in a house with more people. So it's like the more kids and family that you've created, the more social interactions you're having, the less likely your gray matter is going to shift as much, and the less likely you're going to be lonely, and therefore you're the less likely you're going to have what they thought was a midlife crisis.
I'm having a reaction to that.
Oh, what is it?
I don't know. It's just bizarre. Yeah. Like, and as someone who identifies as a man, and I feel like I can relate to the, like, I want to have more social interaction in my life, but I definitely am more isolating. Like, especially compared between the two of us. Like, you're much more social.
But I get it. Like, I'm getting older, and I'm like, it is hard to... Especially in a pandemic.
My instinct on the day is always, I'd rather be home alone.
Yeah.
But I love the idea. I mean, we listened to an amazing podcast about happiness the other day that distinguished between liking something and wanting it. And like my wanting dopamine desire is to be alone. But like what I want for my life is to have like richer, better relationships. And I read about things like this and hear about how like people who have smaller social circles struggle more as they age. And I am like, I want to have more people in my social circle, but it's hard. It's a lot of work. It's challenging to coordinate amongst like, lots of people.
And as you get older, I feel like it does become
everyone's
harder.
Busy.
In your 20s, everyone's
family.
like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, will I? Like we're all gonna have midlife crisis.
But then I'm like, how do we avoid it?
Well, they said that feeling satisfied with one's friendships was a top trait association in the higher associative regions of the brain for preventing midlife crisis. So consistently working on friendships regardless of your age, and having a family, which is so interesting because I kind of thought that people who had midlife crisis, it was almost like because they had a family and like they built a family,
Right,
and
but
therefore
in fact,
they never
that's-
like bought the Porsche or whatever.
Right.
But this one study is saying that actually the people in your home and your kids are what's allow your brain to continue to have these interactions.
This is why I want to join a cult.
Yeah.
Or
I
a
love how
commune,
you're
a
so
commune.
extreme. You're like, I don't really want to hang out with anyone, but like I think I need
I'd
a
like
cult.
to be in a cult.
Yeah, like, that's what
No,
I need.
I love the idea of a commune because I am really poor at organizing and setting it up. But if I can be put in the situation where it's unavoidable, then I'll reap the benefit of it. You know?
Yeah.
Same with like even why I like to work with a trainer, because I just like won't go to the gym, but I really do enjoy feeling healthy and fit and like exercising and stuff. That I feel like a commune is the structure or archetype for forcing community. It's one of the ways, obviously.
It's interesting though to think of a midlife crisis as a lack of relationships with kids, friends, or family, right? Because it's
Right.
like
That's not how it
it's not how it
shows.
shows, and I think it's just me reading these studies, and this has nothing to do with them. This is my personal opinion. Sometimes it feels like the stereotype is a guy buys a car to work on alone. Like it's like you're almost filling in your time with a task that is isolating, when maybe it's like the more knowledge you have to be like, wait, actually maybe it is better if I join a hockey league and
Right.
not just like, do this thing. I don't know. Like I actually don't even know enough, and I think we should do this podcast again when we actually like are going through
When we're
it. When
in
we're
our
like
50s.
50. At that point, we're all gonna just be like cyborgs, and we'll just close our eyes and be like, and like just like go live from our like literal biochemically like chips in our body. But yeah, like I kind of always thought it had to do with like buying an object or
I think
moving
that's like the
your
way that the
house
media
or-
portrays it for
Yeah.
sure. Is that it's like these extreme acts that are out of character for someone because they've had a breaking point of realizing I haven't lived my life the way I
Yeah.
should or want, and suddenly I'm like, why haven't I worked this hard and I don't have anything to show for it? Like maybe I just need to like spend money and do something crazy and suddenly be like, I
And,
want
like,
to travel the world,
yeah,
or like let's
buy-
get a boat and sail, and
Yeah.
like it makes. It's that idea of like feeling stuck, and this thing you're buying
Yeah.
or doing might get you out of that.
And I do think there's something like material or like buying things that like represent youthness. And I'm like, it's interesting because I'm like, it would be really smart if I'm in it, I'm able to go, I just need more relationships. And then you go, maybe it does involve some amount of money, like maybe traveling like with a group of people or something. It would be nice. But like, I kind of am like, I hope I remember this when I maybe get there and just go, okay, Greg, like literally just do a pottery class.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, something
it's
that's
so
actually
hard,
cool
though, when
and,
you're
like-
feeling, and it's hard. I'm sure it's different levels of difficult for different people, but I definitely think it's hard, especially when you're struggling with something, to then be like, I will actually put myself out there more.
Yeah.
It's like so much easier when you're thriving to be like, I'm gonna be out there
Yeah.
around people. But you're right. It's like, how do you hold on to that? And I have read this. I haven't finished this book, but it's called Friendship, and it's like the science of the impact on friends. And it talks a lot about the like gender divide between how men's social circles just like dwindle so much, and they
so
often rely
sad.
on their wives in a heterosexual
Yeah.
relationship. But if their wives leave them or die, it's like it can be like super isolating.
Or if the wife is actually like, I'm building my friendships without you because that's also really normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to continue my friendships. Like, you go continue yours. Like, I'm not going to like baby you.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, it's sad. Like,
it might
it's
just
hard.
be cultural as well. Like men are told to like not share their feelings and need support groups.
Oh, that
and
is
stuff,
that
right?
is fully an issue. Like,
Yeah.
that is so an issue. It's like, it's interesting that a midlife crisis has to do with relationships, and men, quote unquote, suffer more.
However, we should not pretend that this can't or doesn't happen to women.
Yeah, that's true.
But you're right that it's like stereotypically about men. And that may also be a result of sexism, that men were the ones who are like working and have these different expectations of them, where it was like women were held down. It was just like you didn't necessarily imagine your life to be something different.
Also, the study said that that one of the best ways to stave off a midlife crisis was to have a family. But a lot of women that don't have families are more likely to end up in the stereotypical jobs, which are highly underpaid, but the most valuable in society. And that's why society is patriarchy and misogynist. But like jobs like nursing or teaching, where you actually have really rich relationships with people. And therefore, they thought also women who don't have families actually end up having more relationships
because
through
they
their
go
job.
into spaces like
Yeah,
that.
whereas men end up in more isolating career paths. So like if a man decides not to have a family, they're like that's the highest
Right.
chance of a midlife crisis.
So I want to go into my study, but I'm going to start with the caveat, and this is not to dismiss any of the research you just said. There's lots of research out there, but I did come across the fact that a lot of psychologists do not believe midlife crisis exists.
I kind of found these studies a little wacko. Like I was like actually kind of like, okay, first of all, you can't figure out the ages. Like
Right, yeah.
they were kind of, it felt like I totally don't, that doesn't surprise me at all.
That doesn't mean that it can't happen.
Yeah.
I think like the largest study that was ever done found only around 24% of men in this study had this moment. But then when they looked at the moment of midlife crisis, quote unquote, they were so unlinked. So it was like all different versions caused by different things, leading to different emotions,
Life's
leading
so
to different
complicated.
problems.
Yeah.
And so there's no clear like, I think psychologists are like, if there is a midlife crisis, it should actually happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Or roughly like
Yeah.
a 30-year window is pretty massive.
Yeah, like literally, like if you include all the studies I had, it was from like mid 30s up to 70. I'm like, that's pretty much like most of your life.
Yeah. However, then I found a thing that was like economists strongly disagree and have been able to find, and maybe that's through like,
What,
people
like
buying
buying
stuff.
stuff?
But there's just been studies that say they have seen a measurable decline in happiness at the age of around 40 in a study of 1.3
Yeah.
million people over 51 countries.
Yeah.
So whether that's a midlife crisis is the same as a drop in happiness, that ties into my next study, which actually, or my first study, looked at chimpanzees.
So not macaques.
Not macaques. This
Different
is chimpanzees and
ape.
orangutans. So they studied 500 male and female apes across multiple continents. And basically they measured their mood, their enjoyment they gained from socializing, their success at achieving goals. So it was mainly zookeepers. All
I was going to be
locally.
like, it must have been humans like assessing.
It was humans assessing this,
But I
but
feel like a
they
human
wouldn't
would
have
know.
known. And
Yeah.
sorry, and they wouldn't have known what the study was about. You know what I mean? Like it's like, here's a survey. We want you to like track these
And like
gorillas.
You know what I
and-
mean? Like, I'm
or
pretty
not
sure
gorillas.
these zookeepers have these gorgeous relationships with these animals. They would
Yeah.
know.
So basically, like, they were asked a series of questions, not just about the animals' like happiness. Like, it would be tests they would give them. And the final question that the caregivers were asked was like, how would you feel about being that ape for a week?
Oh my God, I love that. They
Either
probably
way, over
love to be the ape.
Over the 500 apes that were measured, they found in middle age well-being dipped and then it climbed again as they moved into old age. So there was this pattern that it like your well-being starts high, like self-proclaimed. Obviously in this case it's like measured by someone watching, and then it dips in middle age and then it goes back up is what they found in the animals. And to be clear, apes in captivity live to around 50 plus years old. So
What was their midlife age?
So they said the lowest well-being occurred at 28 for chimps and 35 for orangutans.
Okay.
And then they, in this study, were like, that roughly corresponds to midlife in humans.
Yeah.
Like, as in probably a little
50.
older. Yeah, because humans live like a bit longer.
I love that. That's a funny way to do it.
Yeah.
That's a really
Yeah.
funny way to try and be like,
And just be like, maybe there's like an evolution, maybe there's a physiological change in our bodies, or maybe we've been alive long enough that things feel a little more monotonous, but then in older age, we start to accept that's just the way it is.
yeah,
Like,
or you're like, I'm running out of time. I need to like, life's beautiful.
Yeah.
Or also you would definitely figure shit out.
But then there are some heavy criticism lofted at this study as well.
Yeah,
being
it is
like,
a little
some psychologists being like, how, like, most other research doesn't show a significant effect. And it's like apes, we know they don't think as far, like humans are so unique because we think really far ahead.
Far ahead,
so
yeah.
what are the apes sad about?
I love learning about
thinking about?
animal brains, and it's like they live in the present. Like animals are so good at mindfulness and meditation. That's all they do.
That's like
And
all Ernie, our
we-
dog, does.
All they
I look
and
at
they-
him and I'm just like, you're just happy all the time.
because he's in the moment. Like everyone's just like be in the moment, be in the moment. I'm like, we're just these psycho animals that are always thinking about the future. We're really some of the few like mammals on Earth that do that. That are able to deeply
Blessing and a
remember the
curse.
past and deeply think about the future. It's amazing, but it's like so funny that in this day and age, everyone's like, ignore those things and just live in the moment. And it's like, that's really hard. And that's what every animal does. Like a squirrel
because they
knows
don't
what's
have
up.
a construct around them, like telling them to get a job. Like Ernie just has us working. He doesn't have to think
Mitch-
about anything.
Okay, so Mitch,
Yeah.
Do you think you're in a midlife crisis? Like, like you felt good before?
It's not like a midlife crisis, but we've been doing the same job for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think it is just sort of there's a point at which you're kind of like, what? Like, I'm not really where. I think for me, sometimes it's like a lack of progress, which is like arbitrary and measured by myself. But it's like when you do something for so long, you get good enough at it that you don't really have to push yourself anymore. We're like in this stage where like it is what it is. We get people to watch videos and share education, and it's amazing. But it's like that hedonic adaptation. It's like if you suddenly get a job that gives you a bunch more money, it will feel good at first. But then if you stay at that amount, then you sort of go like, it just kind of goes away till it's totally normal.
Yeah.
And so I feel like maybe that's where I'm at. That's the one side of it. The other side is sort of like the existential question. And this comes from privilege of being like, oh, we've been able to feel really stable financially, luckily for our job, and have had lots of experiences that I am like, what else is there?
Like in general in the universe for your life.
And like
that
what are
kind
we
of
doing this all
existential?
for? Like why are we all working so hard to get money and be successful? And like what's the point of it? I get the point is for a lot of people to just survive as well, but we're like beyond the just survival thing because we are like lucky enough to have money and a house and like not have to worry about day to day. Like I think in some ways if you have to be stressed about money every day, then that's what your focus is on.
Girl, I need a gratitude journal, hun.
I guess, and I'm not saying,
Not to say that that's
I'm not saying
anything,
no, but
I'm like,
a
there's
lot of
something
research
interesting
shows
there,
that
yeah.
for sure. Like I took that happiness course, and that was one of
Oh,
the
with
things.
Pushkin, the podcast girl. What's her name?
Yeah, Lori Santos.
I just always
her
know
name is not Pushkin.
No, but she always on her podcast goes Pushkin.
I think that's a network of podcasts.
Oh, well, it sounds like her voice.
it is.
But yeah, I do think that's really interesting because I mean, I don't know, like that's hard.
It is just like I think it's like a middle phase for me, not to midlife crisis. Hello, but it's like the transition between learning new ideas and then actually believing them. And I think I am really interested in like philosophy and Buddhism. I don't study those things, obviously, but I listen to a lot of people talk about them, and they kind of make you question what we're all doing and what makes us happy and why it will, like the things that give us stress. And it's like, why should that? And I'm in the phase where I know the things that are interesting and they're just making me like critically evaluate my life, which makes me feel really weird.
Whoa,
Instead of
so like
being
you're
at the
learning-
stage where I'm like able to like feel like I've moved past that.
So you're learning about like Buddhism and like living in the present and that like the things that you thought mattered, like what were the things that what are the things that Buddhism's like kind of attacking in your personality? I know it sounds intense.
It's
but
like the existence of the self, but also that like your suffering comes from your clinging to what you want things to be and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that, like I don't know. Like obviously, it's like goes back to that hedonic treadmill, and you always want more, and you always want more, and you think, oh, if I just get this, if we just get X in our life or on social media, when we reach that milestone, it's gonna feel so good.
Huh, so
and
you're-
then
then
you
you're
get
like-
there, and then you just. I'm so used to that treadmill now. I'm even like, I know
Why do I
I'm
even
not
care?
gonna feel good when
Yeah.
I get those things that we're trying to get.
so is it
That-
making you complacent and then not want to do anything, and then that makes you feel bad?
Well, I don't know. I think like I've heard a lot of people talk about finding personal gratification from like helping others and doing things that are more altruistic.
Yeah.
And I guess I feel like our job is in some ways, like I've always felt good about sharing and like being an educational channel and
Yeah.
teaching science. But
Yeah.
I think because it's on the internet, and I think in the last 2 years being in a pandemic, it's so isolated that I don't know that I really feel like we're helping people.
That's so funny.
You know what I
I
mean?
really think that maybe the only reason I'm able to do this and feel that less is because I actually think what we're doing matters. Like, for example, I'm like, we made a video that taught people what the mRNA vaccine does, and it has 10 million views. Like, I'm like, that to me is like, I could only imagine as a kid, that's like the most incredible freaking thing I would be able to do with my life. I also always wanted to be a science teacher. So maybe it's easier for me because it's like, that is just being a science teacher, like on steroids. Or it's easier to feel like that actually made a difference.
But I
Do you
guess
think
like,
about that video?
Yeah, but I feel pretty detached because like it's like the internet. Things just go around, and I don't think about it every day.
But people clearly use that video to get the vaccine.
Yeah, that's true. Like I feel good about that when I think about it, but I don't think about it that often. But then there's another part of me like that steps out and it's like, what's that even for? Like, of course, I understand. We're living in the moment and we're like, we want to support and encourage people to get vaccines. We want to like fight climate change. We want to do all these things. But like in the grand scheme
now you
of
go
it,
to like the universe scale?
yeah, sometimes I'm like, we're literally in this blip. Oh, Ernie's barking. Sorry. We're in this blip of time that's so specific to ourselves. But like humans have been existing for 100,000 years. Like we're just like, I don't know. Sometimes I just like see the large scale and I'm like, what are we freaking out about anything for?
Yeah.
But I'm still freaking out.
Yeah, because that's so interesting because I feel like I zoom out to the universe, you know, the like the little blip that is our lives, even this existence on Earth, like every aspect of everyone's life, whether you're like, you know, Barack Obama or like someone else, like you act like there is a meaninglessness to that only when I'm really stressed. Like I don't go there when I'm feeling like I use it as a coping mechanism, but you're right. It could easily be used to then just be like, actually, I don't want to do anything. And
It's
like,
not that it
nothing
makes me
matters.
want to do nothing, but it makes me feel like I'm trying to find like and intellectualize a reason for it.
Yeah.
And I think what will happen as I continue on this journey, especially like as I actually feel like I understand more and more what some of these like philosophies are teaching, is like you can't do that.
You can't do what?
Like you actually can't. There's not a reason or an answer like to things.
Oh yeah, so then you can't even expect to be looking
stop,
for it.
Yeah, stop worrying about it. Like I'm in the stage where I'm like, there's no reason.
Yeah.
What is it? If I don't find it, it's meaningless.
Yeah.
And then the real answer is like, well, it is meaningless. So just like,
So like go back
don't
to
worry.
caring.
I don't really know. I don't know. I just like am in that weird phase right now.
No, it's really interesting. Like I do think there's something so interesting because it's like, yeah, like I'll come home and Mitch will be like blasting like Alan Watts, like, there, your finger is just meant to be the same. And like you really put a lot of like energy.
What you just
Or it's just like it's like
just say?
it's like there's
There,
no
a
difference
finger.
between the tip of your finger and the air beside it. You are the universe and the universe is you. And it's like it's true. Like those things are all beautiful and interesting, but it's like so funny to think that if you're not at a certain point, it could also maybe like hinder a little bit. Like any aspect of growth, there's always like an issue.
there's like this beginning growing stage where sometimes it's harder.
Yeah, like therapy. When you start to learn about yourself, you're like, I hate myself.
Yeah, and it risks
Yeah.
it risks you feeling like really sad, or even working out. You're like, I am in physical pain.
Yeah,
You
but
get
then
to the
it-
stage,
yeah.
then you start to be like, now I feel
Yeah.
better. But when you first start working out, it like hurts.
Yeah.
and I feel like maybe I'm just a little bit in that where I'm like clinging on to these ideas too strongly and looking at them in a way that's like I've never really thought about, and it's like making me be like, holy shit, what is the point of anything?
But I do think that is kind of midlife crisis vibes. I know we
Sure.
kind of just found out that many psychologists agree, and the studies I've read were really bunky ass, and that's not even a real thing, maybe. But I think a lot of crises in general are linked to this thing we're told, which is like success matters. Literally now we live in this disgusting, in my opinion, social media world where it's like visibility and clicks and like it's all linked to like this quote unquote success that if you just buy into that fully, it's going to be really stressful, but you might be like, this is what life's about. And then all of a sudden you have a lot of like purpose, even though it's obviously, we know like really like you're going to burn out. It's going to be really depressing and hard. You have maybe like uniquely had a lot of quote unquote success in that world. And now you have to reckon with the fact that it's like not meaningful, whereas a lot of people might be searching for that for a long time.
Yeah,
and
find it
then
out later, like-
maybe get it. Maybe you are having an early midlife crisis because you got a lot of the success and things early. The family thing is interesting because like you don't have a family. Like it'd be interesting for you to have all this in a family at the age of 33 and like wonder if you
Right.
feel the same way, or if really what the science says is a family can like really stave off these issues, because that actually weirdly, I don't know because I don't have kids, but I could imagine that hijacks your neurons and the circuitry of your brain to be like, this is what matters.
Yeah.
Because I now have...
And almost just distracts you too, because you don't have time
Yeah.
to like stress about
Yeah.
the other stuff, because you're like, I have to take care of this kid.
And you're actually probably feeling a love for a thing that I can't even really fathom. I don't know, like, if that's true. Like, I know some people are like, actually, like, I don't have issues with having kids. But like yesterday, that person on that podcast about happiness said the only thing she has not hedonically adapted to is hugging her kid.
Cuddling, yeah.
Yeah, like that's really
that makes sense.
interesting.
And she was like, because your kids are always changing. So like
Yeah.
you're never getting used to them, because they adapt, and like every month your kid's different.
Yeah, and
Even
every
when
time
they're
you
like
hug your
14
kid,
to 16
yeah.
to 18 is like, you
So
can
different.
recall for myself, like so distinctly different
Yeah.
ages.
And every time you hug your kid, they're hugging them at a different stage where they're maybe hugging you because they want to, or
Yeah, I
they're
never
hugging them 'cause they're
also
crying.
never adapt to hugging and cuddling or any, like my dog.
Yeah, that's true. Me neither. That's so maybe.
But
That's,
I'm sure it will be even stronger feelings for
Yeah.
a kid when you're just like, oh my God, I love this thing so much.
it's so intense. But yeah, no, you're definitely like on like you're thinking deeply about things. That's just good.
But sometimes it's not.
But
That's where
sometimes
I
it's
also
not.
realize, like,
Yeah.
also often what Buddhism or these philosophers are talking about is the acknowledgement that, like, the advantage of being human from an evolutionary standpoint is that we're so smart. We were able to socialize in groups and like come together and do these amazing things. And the mental suffering is the trade-off. Like that we can think so far in advance and be anxious about things that might never happen and be stressed about like concepts versus just like a literal lion. Like Ernie can't be stressed out by a concept. But like I can be stressed out by this like virtual world of the internet and what it means to have like not, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like a certain amount of people watching or liking or commenting or all those things. And so I'm
life
like,
is
what
suffering.
will that be in 10
Isn't
years?
that a Buddhist thing? Life is suffering.
Yeah, that's the whole
I
thing.
kind of find that really comforting sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like life is suffering, and then you're like, okay, well, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? Like,
and I don't want to suffer.
like it's an
I'm also
intense
like
thing
a
to
really
say.
big baby when it comes to pain. And I'm like, maybe it's linked. And I'm just like a big baby when it comes to any kind of suffering.
Like you're a big. Oh my god.
You know what I mean? How they sometimes say emotional pain is actually not that different from physical, and people sometimes regulate emotional pain through painkillers. Like they're like actually linked where like ibuprofen, and I'm not recommending this
God,
to anyone,
that's
but
so funny,
studies have
like-
said like ibuprofen can make people feel less emotional. That maybe I'm just like really sensitive to pain and really sensitive to like emotional turmoil.
Yeah. No, and you have like an extreme personality. Like there's something like, it's like you're I could see you getting so extremely into Buddhism that you're actually like, I don't want to work ever again. Do you know what I mean? Whereas it's like, or you could take those teachings and understand
Right,
you have to work.
balance
Yeah. Or like, I know you'll get there, but you're just like a funny person who I've seen in
No,
your life
truly,
react
I'm like
really intensely.
The other day, I asked my mom if she wanted to like travel to India, and I was like, and then she would leave, and I would just like go into an ashram for a year and just like stay there.
Yeah, like it's like you're either literally doing that or you're like a capitalist pig who like is gonna like
Take over the world.
like have the most success financially in the world. Like it's like so funny. You're like, I'm either or, and anything in between is a
Does
failure.
anyone else feel that?
I think a lot of people feel that. You
The like dichotomous living.
but you just have an interesting, like, since the time I've known you, you felt like you've always been obsessed with this sort of like Buddhist Gandhi thing. That's always been a part of you, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also always been this part of you that's been like, I'm gonna fucking kill it. Like I'm going to be successful. Like I'm gonna be really good
Yeah,
at
I
school.
was. Yeah.
Like you were Oliver. Like I know that like that's like maybe a small portion of your life, but I really think that probably had a really big impact on your development. Like you were a really successful kid. Like you were like a child star. You know what I mean? That's like a serious thing. Like a lot of child stars like maybe suffer with similar things. Whereas like I was a dumbass in grade 9, like who like picked my nose and was like, I don't know, maybe I'll be a teacher. You know what I mean? Like that's probably made it a little bit like I didn't have high ambitions for myself.
Like in that sense, yeah.
Whereas I feel like you always did. And I think your parents are like, they really fostered like your sister. So like you and your sister are ambitious. Like that word ambitious is interesting.
Yeah, I would struggle to have, and I wonder though, like I feel like a lot of people do feel like this, but then maybe not. Like I struggled to have the same thing for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Even if and that means like a job in this case, like
Yeah.
any job I've had that I've loved at first, eventually if it doesn't evolve and change enough, I feel like It shocks me that some people can just be like, yeah, I'm just comfortable and I don't need to make my life any different now.
Well, they're working to live, probably, right?
Maybe. And that might be the truth, but some people are just more like comfortable.
Yeah.
Like can be like, here's my
Yeah.
salary. It's enough for me to live, to have my family, to whatever. And I'm just going to do that job the rest of my life. And that's,
Yeah.
and a lot of people aren't like that.
And then they have a midlife crisis. I'm kidding.
Maybe, but I think there's the other side, and I know lots of people who are similar to this, where it's like I can't just like do the same thing forever. Like I want to constantly feel like I'm growing,
Yeah,
and progressing.
me too.
And,
I think, yeah.
but maybe I'm too far on one extreme.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people maybe feel that too, but maybe their job isn't giving them the option. They know that's like how they're going to feel financially stable, so they're looking to outside of their job for growth. Like,
Get it there.
There's so many ways you can feel growth that have nothing to do with your job, but you're in a really interesting job where whatever you do defines it. Like there's no one telling you what to do, so it's up to you to figure out what it is, and therefore like you can still be really ambitious and you can still do all this stuff, but then Buddhism's like, but why? Like just don't. Or like
It's
whoa.
not saying don't, but it's just
No,
saying,
sorry,
like,
but it's
don't
questioning,
cling to
like,
those
yeah.
ideas so strongly because
Yeah.
that's actually what brings suffering when
Yeah.
you can't
Get
get that.
And you were probably really motivated by them before
Yeah.
like understanding Buddhism.
even like creating ASAP Science was
Yeah.
like part of that. It was like exciting, and I wanted to create something like this with you that would like affect people and like be seen by lots of people and educate people, and like to whatever degree that's worked. Obviously, it's had an impact. Like we have lots of videos with many people watching them, so it's just like, is that bad? It's trying to like measure like. Obviously, I feel positive about that in one place, but on the other hand, that's the result of a behavior and mentality that's maybe actually not that positive.
Wow.
Right? Like to have had that much motivation and care to be driven by views and subscribers and money and stuff.
I feel so stupid and dumb beside you. I'm like, oh. I'm
Wait,
like,
what?
No, I'm just like, you're thinking about all this stuff so deeply, and I'm just like, I make video about science. And I'm just like,
Not true.
no, I'm just like, wow, okay, whoa, true. Now I'm like, oh my God, okay.
Well,
am I having a midlife crisis?
No, because I think you're more well balanced as a
But-
human being.
Oh, okay, I am a Libra.
Like you're not as extreme.
I'm a Libra.
I don't know
Right?
what
Does
that
not know what that
means.
means. I don't know what that means either, but I know it's a scale.
It's not real.
But I know it's a
Shoot.
scale.
Do we have a podcast on that already?
No, astrology. I'll write it down. Oh my God, are you kidding? That one's gonna be intense. Astrology is so intense these days.
I'm gonna end with one last thing that's gonna like impact you. It was a fun little side fact
Okay.
study related to midlife crisis. And now, as we said, midlife crisis might not be real, but this other study found that marijuana use was associated with a higher risk of social and financial midlife crisis.
Oh, I'm in for a big toasty one.
So, but it said that people, I'm trying to find the number. It was
Oh,
like
I'm gonna have a bigger,
4 or
big old
more
one.
days a week, maybe was the number.
Oh, there's a Tesla Model 3 coming after your
But they
Tivoli Model
studied
3.
like 1,000 people from birth to age 38, and that's how they started finding like the people who had.
Maybe your midlife crisis was to buy a Tivoli Model 3, and because I have smoked so much weed, mine's gonna be, or
A
eat
Tesla
so much
Model
weed,
3?
a Tesla Model 3. I'm gonna go way past the like radio clock.
Maybe, yeah, we'll find out.
No, I'm trying to. I've been really good with marijuana recently. I rewatched my own video about what happens when you quit weed. And I literally watched the video I made about quitting weed in order to like help myself. And I'm like, this is insane. It's like you've made this to tell
That
yourself.
makes sense. So that going back to that happiness lab, like Laurie Santos, who's a professor at, I think it's, I forget which was
Yale or something
one of those
big.
Ivy League. But she always is like, you'd think that I'm like the happiness researcher. I would like have figured it all out, but she's constantly having to like remind herself.
Yeah, and that's
go
also-
through those struggles.
That other psychologist was saying, she was like, I study happiness, and it's just sort of like whatever chapter I'm writing, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
While I'm writing it, it'll be
'Cause
like,
you're, like,
be
thinking
nice
about
to
it every
others.
day.
And then she like, for like, while she writes that chapter for a month, she's nice to others. And then it's like, that's interesting because I feel like that with ASAP Science. Like I actually really
When you're
limited
writing an episode.
how much weed I was consuming when I was learning about how addictive it is and what happens when you try and quit. And now I'm having to rewatch that in order to deal with it now. And now I'm making one about what happens when you quit porn, and I haven't watched porn.
Right.
But it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to
Wow,
make one
you're
in the
so
future, and I'm going
aware.
to forget and be like, shit, I have to remember to not watch porn.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, it is true. Just like you come in and out of things. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's
but I'm just
okay.
like, how do you see it from the outside?
Yeah,
Like, how do
I don't
you-
know.
Like when we were listening to that podcast the other day, I kind of had a moment of realization where it was like, you just Like, it was a reminder that hedonic adaptation is a thing. The hedonic
Yeah.
treadmill, where it's like you think you want something until you get
Get
it.
it.
Then
And
you
then
like
you're
it for a
sick of
bit.
it.
But yeah, even
Yeah.
if it's your PhD and those things, I'm not saying any of those things are bad. Like, it doesn't even have to be a negative
Well,
thing.
okay, that's that thing that we're gonna end. And everyone's like, everyone's just like
Shut
listening, being
up.
like, these people are truly like going through something. But the gratitude journal, I must say, I'm the type of person that like, I feel like every self-help / science YouTuber or whatever, they're just like, gratitude journal. And it's like annoying kind of. I kind of roll my eyes at it. But I will say it is the only tangible thing that's ever been explained to me to somewhat help deal with the hedonic adaptation that is life. Because it's like, you think about the thing that if you didn't have, you'd be sad you missed it. And I do it I've been doing it every morning for like 7 months. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I'm in a bad place. Like, I think I'm lucky to be quite a happy person, but I'm like, it is. Sometimes they're so lazy and I'm just like looking, I'm like, I'm grateful for the coffee mug in front of me. Like, it's like, I'm like bullshitting it just to get it done.
Yeah.
But then other times I'm like, oh my
actually
God.
brings
Like,
out
I
something.
actually really now care about that thing that I never would have cared about because it's just there and I bought it years ago and it's meaningless, but it's actually meaningful.
Yeah.
So it's
no,
like-
I do think that is a good thing to do. My only caveat and the frustration is like there's a million things. It's like I've seen classic TikToks that make jokes where it's like, after I do my 1 hour of exercise, my 30 minutes of meditation, my 30 minutes of gratitude journaling, my whatever. It's like there's all, and then like,
Yeah, it's so
The
funny. Now
amount
I'm
of
ready
stuff-
to live life. And
Yeah.
it's like also you're privileged. Like you're
You've run out of
probably,
time.
you're
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
so privileged that you can do that. That's why you're appreciated.
yeah.
But
Honestly. Honestly.
I'm literally just saying this thing that I do in the morning that takes 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I actually only do 6 things.
Yeah.
Right? That actually takes.
I did it for
that
a
could
little
take
bit. I just
seconds.
like, I'm so bad at morning journaling. I don't like it, but maybe I should try again. Like even like morning pages and stuff I've like started, and then it's like every 3 months I do one.
Yeah. No, that's funny.
Everyone's different, okay?
Yeah.
And some of us are just bound to struggle for the rest of our
Life
lives.
is suffering. Buddhism. Okay. Bye.
Oh my gosh.
That was
No,
crazy.
yeah, thanks for listening.
Boo.
Yeah, bye.